morning, everybody. Welcome once again to Haywood Baptist Church's online service. Today, we're continuing the theme, Where is God When? And we're going to pick up today with Where is God when we fail? So that should be an interesting time of discussion. Now, today, we're also going to include a little interview, a little video clip. Next week, we're going to have a more personable interview with Joe and Lois Ovenden. So they're the Link missionaries for church. So rather than the prayers for others today, we're going to hear from them, and hopefully through the week we can continue considering and praying for them, and also all those who are working for BMS with the particular challenges that are being thrown up with the coronavirus. Now, as I always say, 100% welcome to all who are watching. God loves you, God likes you, and God gave his son Jesus Christ for you. And so today, as we come together into God's presence, let us pray. Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to be able to meet together, to hear songs of worship, to hear preaching, to hear things shared from others. Lord, we ask that you would be with us today. Lord, I pray for each of those who are watching, that the peace that passes understanding would guard their minds and their hearts today in Christ Jesus. We ask, O God, for the presence of your Holy Spirit to be evident amongst us today. Challenge us, change us, equip us for life in this world. Teach us, O God, how to be true Jesus people in this world. And Lord, where we've had agendas that have not been right, where we've held things too tightly when you've called us to let go, God, we come today in a spirit of honest reflection and repentance to say, help us, oh God, to be people who are about the business of Jesus Christ in this world. And so therefore, Lord, I bring myself to say, Lord, too, take away anything within me that is not part of your plan, is not part of your way in this world. And help us, God, give us the strength, give us the grace, give us the courage to follow after you, to hear your words and to put them into practice, because we ask this in and through the precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So over to Clive now to lead us in some songs of worship.
Nothing can separate, even if I ran away. Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have new mercies for me every day. Your love never fails. You stayed the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. The wind's strong and the water's deep, but I'm not alone here in these open seas. Your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. You make all things work together for good. 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 You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Redeemer of the wasted years, restorer of my soul, lover of the desperate heart, healing Lord who makes the broken whole, light still shining in the darkness, hope of those whose hope is gone, grace to the undeserving, seeker and finder and savior of the wandering one. As for me, my footsteps were slipping. As for me, I had almost lost my way. As for me, my strength was almost gone, but you lifted me out of the pit, out of the sinking clay. You redeemed the years that the Lord and fill them again. As for me, my footsteps were slipping. As for me, I had almost lost my way. As for me, my strength was almost gone. But you lifted me out of the pit, out of the sinking clay. You redeemed the years that the locusts have eaten. You rekindled the light of the flickering flame. You strengthened the ones who are bruised, worn and beaten, and lift them and love them, restore them and fill them again. You forgive them, renew them, rebuild them and fill them again.
Hello, we are the Ovenden family and we are serving with BMS World Mission in Gulu in northern Uganda. I'm a speech and language therapist and Joe heads up the development work here. We know that many of you are wondering how the virus is affecting us and Uganda and the work here. So we would love to give you a bit of an update. We were hoping to see many of you in person to be able to tell you these things, but sadly at the moment we are here. But we know that God has got us here for a reason. So thank you for supporting us and journeying with us, even though we can't see you face to face at the moment.
So Uganda has 50-something confirmed cases to date. We make this video in the middle of April. The first cases emerged 3 or 4 weeks ago. There haven't been any deaths related to COVID specifically, but the government has put in pretty strict restrictions, lockdown type of restrictions, which means that there's no movement of people basically across the whole country. So no public transport, no buses, no minibuses that move people around. There's a strict curfew in place, no moving around after dark. All private cars have to be parked. You need special permits, special stickers to be able to move your vehicle, and really that's only for medical purposes. So although there's been no coronavirus deaths, the impact of the lockdown has been pretty severe, particularly for the economy. Most people here live hand to mouth, day by day. The money that they earn from their business activities is what they spend on feeding their family. So shutting down the economy basically overnight has put many people at risk of hunger and starvation. And one of the huge implications, and there have been numerous reported deaths because of people not being able to access healthcare, because normally people would use private vehicles or boda, which are motorcycle taxis, to be able to move patients between clinics or to big hospitals in town. Nobody can move around, so it means that people aren't getting the care that they need for all the other types of diseases and illnesses that affect people here, malaria and typhoid and whatever else. So that's been the main kind of concern and threat for people, is how can they survive day to day, and how can they get the care that they need when they need it.
As many of you are experiencing in the UK, schools are also closed, as we would expect. But unlike in the UK, teachers aren't able to provide anything. So there's people who don't have access to the internet, even books or pens and paper. So really at the moment, for the majority of students, and almost, I can't remember what percentage of the Ugandan population is under 18, but it's a huge proportion. They are just at home, really not progressing at all. But one of the exciting things that is happening in response to that Read for Life, which is an organisation that we've worked a little bit alongside, and our good friends with us. They are putting together radio shows. So the radio is how everybody communicates here. That's how people listen to the presidential announcements. People aren't really watching TVs or going on the internet. So we've managed to secure a daily radio slot on 2 different stations. I'm helping in a very small way reading stories, which can be played online, and gathering together material in between trying to do our own homeschooling with the cubs, which has been better than expected so far, and we are really fortunate that we have a lovely outside space, and the children aren't used to going to parks or the cinema or things like that. We don't have those things here anyway, so we're really fortunate that actually for them the disruption is relatively minimal. So thank you for those that are thinking of us as a family. We are doing really well. Our main concern is how we support those around us. As Joe was saying, the knock-on consequences are really significant for those people around us. And obviously for our work, I shut the clinic before my speech therapy clinic before the restrictions came in, so that we could open up that room for an isolation ward at the health centre if we needed to. And actually we're just making the most of having this unprecedented opportunity to do all the background, the paper things, developing training, loads of continued professional development that we can do because we're not seeing patients. And how about for the rest of the work, Joe?
Yeah, so for the rest of the team, of course, it's the same scenario with the office being closed. So it's an opportunity to catch up on things that often get sidetracked, writing reports or reworking training programs and that kind of thing. So that's the case for the child protection work that the Christian lawyers are doing with Linda Darby. Tim Darby's not able to do any borehole drilling, can't get hold of any equipment, and moving around in the field wouldn't be possible at the moment. The agricultural work we've been pushing on with. Getting hold of seeds has been difficult because of the limitations on transport, getting things moved around the country. But we've managed to secure seeds for the planned agricultural work, the stuff that was in plan already this year, and we've managed to use motorcycles to distribute the seeds to farmers. So that stuff is going in the ground as we speak, and will significantly contribute to food security for the coming months for the households that are part of that project. And as part of a relief response, we're working with colleagues in Didcot with BMS to see if there is a way that we can expand our planting programme certainly for this first planting season this year, so that we can get more seeds shared around other communities that we've worked with in previous years, so that there's more foodstuffs available. Because if there were to be a significant outbreak, and if these restrictions carry on for longer, then there's a significant possibility that food security and access to food more generally is going to be a problem for people over coming weeks and months. So yeah, that's something that we're also hoping to do.
So part of our response here as a BMS team, and also with some close Christian friends here, we've managed to get a group together. One thing I said we were doing was the education. Another thing has been trying to secure some food in advance of that need. So to date, we have about 16 tons of maize, and about 20 tons of beans. How we distribute that will be the next thing. There are some significant restrictions on those things, so we would love your prayers for that. But what has been lovely has been how the community here has come together to support each other, and you are part of that, as always, supporting us from afar with your prayers and the financial support that you give to BMS. As always in any crisis situation, we're just so proud of what BMS is doing. It is taking a really key role in the Christian global response, actually, not just BMS, but as part of a wider a wider push. Okay, lovely. Okay. So one of the things that they are doing is helping to provide the PPE that people need, providing food, providing mental health support, really seeing on the bigger scale where things are needed, and not just reactionary, but in anticipation of knowing that the virus affects different countries in different ways. And so if you would love to be part of that response, then BMS has a special fund. So you can look at bmsworldmission.org/coronavirus-appeal. And yeah, on there they will show you ways of praying, ways of giving financially. And we just want to say thank you. As always, the fact that you're even watching this video means that you are somebody who is supporting us through prayer, through letters, through financial giving to BMS, and we have really felt that support. It's felt a bit isolating in some ways, not being able to come back as planned. I'm sure you're all feeling really isolated as well in many ways, and we are praying for you. We know that the situation in the UK is really scary for a lot of people at the moment, and please be assured that as you pray for us, we are also praying for you. So thank you so much. We will try and keep you updated on the situation here. And in terms of prayer, I suppose the big things are, well, we thank the Lord that the virus has not been spreading quickly. As far as we know, officially it's not been spreading quickly here, because if it does, the reality is that the healthcare isn't there to support. I think there's less than 60 ICU beds in the whole of the country, and a very few up here. So we do pray that Uganda is spared that. Please help us. Please pray for our wisdom in how we respond, for patience with the children, and also not really related but will be related is, you may have seen in the news, the plague of locusts, which is increasing in our neighbouring countries, and if that comes coinciding with the potential increase of things here, that could have a really significant effect. So we'd love your prayers for that too. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, sounds good to me.
Great, thank you. Take care and God bless.
God bless. Bye-bye.
The reading's taken from John 21, 1-17. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the son of Zebedee, and the other two of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I am going fishing." They said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, with fish laid on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep."
Have you ever failed? Have you ever set off on a venture with passion, with vision, and ultimately all your hopes and dreams were dashed because you failed in the enterprise? Have you ever failed a loved one or a close friend? Maybe you promised to be there for them. You promised something, and when the time came to deliver, you was unable to deliver. Maybe you failed God in your life. You've made these bold promises and commitments when you were younger, and you can look back and see in your history that you've failed and failed and failed. What does failure feel like? Failure can be quite a shameful thing, can't it? Because we always want to do our best. And then to know that we've not lived up to that inward expectation creates a sense of shame. And I think for myself, whenever I've had a failure, I've not really wanted to, I've always locked up my feelings and almost thought, well, this sense of shame will go away. And if I did let that person down, or if I did let God down, eventually they'll forget about it. But you see, failure and the shame that failure can bring, it has a handy habit of sticking with us until we get honest in a conversation with a person we may have let down. And I've always recognised this. I mean, when people have failed me or perhaps done wrong to me, when they get the courage to say, "I'm sorry," and whenever I've had the courage to say I'm sorry when I've let someone down, I've always found that the person I've apologised to has been like 100% more gracious than I ever expected when I just had this sense of shame, when I was silent on it. But I think we do all struggle with failure. And I think sometimes we can struggle with failure because we want everything to be perfect the first time. I remember when I was at university and we had this big thing about teaching resilience, and the fact that most entrepreneurs, we look at them now and we see them rich and, you know, everything's working for them, but they will always say, "I failed. Then I got up and I failed again, but I learned to fail better. And then I failed better, and then I failed better, until my idea, my passion came to fruition." We can often have a setback and then we define our lives based on that setback. I'm a failure. I can't do anything right. I'm always flying off the handle at people. I can't control my mental health. I'm always going under. we tend to feel quite ashamed, I think anyway, around failure. Now we've got a wonderful, again, just a perfect story today from the Bible, because we're looking at where is God when we fail. And this story focuses around Peter. Peter, the loudmouth, who made all these vows about not forsaking Jesus. I'll be with you even when you die. And he denies Jesus 3 times. Here is a man, Peter. He was a failure and is probably filled with shame because he failed the one he dearly loved, Jesus Christ himself. Now the story is great because the beginning of the story, I love it because I read it and I recognise me in this. Peter says to everybody, I'm going out fishing. Yeah? What's Peter doing? Peter's saying, I'm going back to what I did before. I can't really follow anymore. There's no future. There's nothing for me. Peter knew that Jesus had been raised from the dead, but Peter was like, I'm going back to what I did before. And isn't that what can often happen to us when we fail or when life gets tough? We look back and we say, I'm going back to that. I should have never have joined this Christian enterprise. I should have never have believed that I could be the one to follow Jesus and be this big hero. I'm going back. And I love that because that's true. I mean, let's not deny it. When times get tough, we look back. And I love then the other disciples say, well, we'll come with you as well. But they don't catch anything. Failure sometimes makes us look back, sometimes makes us go back to what is before, but it's never the same. You left what was before to follow a greater cause, a greater way. That's never going to leave you. And so when Peter goes back, it's interesting that there's no catch there. It's futile. Perhaps what he thought he was going to get in going back for a fish, he didn't get. Because his life had been touched by Jesus Christ. He couldn't have denied that, but he probably wished his life had never been touched by Jesus Christ. But then I love the next bit of the story. There's Peter in the boat. He's gone back. He perhaps wishes he'd never left that boat. And he hasn't got a catch. And Jesus speaks. And you know what I love about this? I love that it's like Jesus repeats the first miracle that made Peter leave his boat, doesn't he? He meets Peter and he commands him to do something with his nets, and they get a miraculous catch once again. Isn't that awesome? Peter probably hates himself. He's in the boat, and perhaps even him catching nothing, he's saying to himself further, I'm always going to be a failure. I let the Lord down, and now I can't even do the things I did before. And Jesus Christ, in his grace and mercy, repeats the miracle, the first miracle. And I love this thing that Peter apparently is naked in the boat and he puts some clothes on. He wants to swim back to shore. Now he jumps out of the boat. Something grabs his attention again. Jesus meets with him in an all too familiar miracle. And Peter jumps out of the boat and swims back to shore. And what have we got next? Ha ha! That wonderful thing, haven't we? A meal. A meal. Jesus just says, let's sit together and let's have something to eat. I love that about God. I love that about the God Jesus reveals. He sits here with a failure. He sits here with somebody who feels shame. And he has a meal. I think that act of a meal was God's way of saying, sit with me and eat, because your shame has been taken away. I mean, that was the whole thing about table fellowship anyway. If you ate with somebody, it meant you were close to them. So Jesus says, come and sit with me again. I still consider you my friend. Jesus, grace and mercy revealed to Peter. And then we get, don't we, a conversation. People have pointed out this conversation is interesting because Jesus asks 3 times the same kind of question. There's little variations. Some people think it's Jesus reminding Peter of the 3 times that he denied him. But I love it. I love the fact that, I mean, I looked at it just before I started recording where Jesus says, Peter, do you love me more than these? Like the first question I wonder is, do you love me more than fish? Do you love me more than this profession? Do you love me enough to leave this profession to tend to my lambs? Peter says, I do. Jesus asks again, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, I do love you, Lord. The 3rd time, Jesus asks, and Peter gets aggrieved. Maybe he thinks Jesus didn't believe his first 2 replies, so his 3rd reply is insistent. You know, I love you. Can you imagine what's going on for Peter in this conversation? Peter might have expected to be upbraided about him denying Jesus 3 times. Peter might have expected a confrontation. Peter might have expected anger. But instead he gets questions he didn't expect. And I wonder when Jesus asked the first question, do you love me? I wonder whether Peter begins to well up inside, thinking, but I do. I always loved you, Jesus. I didn't have the strength to do what I said. And I feel shame because I really loved you. And I still love you. Maybe the 2nd time he's asked, he goes, yes! Yes! I do love you. And maybe the 3rd time he thinks, Jesus, get over yourself. I love you. What an exchange. A grace exchange. No mention of Peter's denial, Peter's sin, Peter's failure. We could say the 3 questions were prodding at that. But Jesus comes a different way. And I love the very final thing, because all the way through when Jesus has asked, do you love me? He's said things like, firstly, tend my lambs. And then what have we got? Then tend my sheep. But then ultimately he finishes with, feed my sheep. In other words, Peter, you're back in. You feed my sheep. And that is God's restoration of Peter. So where is God when we fail? Well, it's easy in a way, isn't it? God is there. But it's not so much God is there, because God as God is everywhere. When we say, where is God when we fail, I guess we're wanting to know, how does God look at us? How does God come to us when we fail? And I wonder whether this pattern is great, isn't it? Jesus looks with pity and compassion on Peter, having gone back to what he knows best and is futile, and in grace he gives a miracle. Folks, God is super gracious. He's abundant in his grace. He's rich in love and slow to anger. His love is so immense that he even does an undeserved miracle for Peter. And he will meet with us in abundant grace in our failures. But not only that, he'll invite us to come and sit with him for a meal. And then in that meal, God's heart towards us is to say, let's have a chat. Let me unearth, says God, what's really inside of you. Let me get it to the front of your life so that you can truly be restored to me. God revealing himself in a meal and in conversations. And look at the manner of this conversation. It is not a scolding rebuke for a failure and a shame-filled man. It is a conversation designed for restoration. And when God comes to you and when God comes to me and we've failed again, he comes with the purpose of restoration. He doesn't come angry. He doesn't come to beat us in condemnation. He knows. He knew Peter had been beating himself up too much. He knows that. God doesn't need to beat us up again. He needs to love us up into a place where we know we can get up and we can start again on the course that Jesus called us to in the first place. Today, my friends who are watching, if you are filled with a sense of shame because you failed and failed and failed, let me tell you, Jesus Christ wants to come and sit with you, and he wants to restore you. He wants to give you his grace. He wants to restore you. And look, friends, I say this a lot. I do say this a lot. Because often when I read these stories, I see myself here. When I went on that stag do that people know about in 2014, and Jesus Christ invaded my world again. And the one thing I said to my friend Pete Baker was, I don't know if I can follow. Why did I say that? What was that voice? That voice was shame. That voice was because so much failure had been accrued and I didn't know whether I could trust myself to follow aright this Jesus who was coming to me in 2014. And you know, my friend Pete never said, well, you need to repent of all your past. He never said repent of all your past. He never said anything like that. He said, why don't you just talk to Jesus with me about how you feel? I had a discussion like Peter had with Jesus Christ in his grace and mercy. And I remember, wow, what it felt like to wake up the next day and sense that the restoring work of the Holy Spirit had come again into my heart. It felt like the word that was given from Jesus to Peter, go and feed my sheep, had come to me. It was like Jesus was saying, come on now. Let's go. Let's do this together now. And know that if you fail again, I'm here with grace and mercy to pick you up and carry on together. You know, folks, sometimes the shame that we carry over failure is nothing to do with God. It can often be to do with theology and to do with what the church says. We're so desperate to get everything right that we want our theology to be right. We want the things we do to be right. And when it goes wrong, we can't admit. And we can't even see that God would be okay with us getting something wrong. But God is there. He's looking at us from afar as we try and make ends meet ourselves because we're full of shame. He does a miracle. He invites us to communion in a meal. And he, my friends, restores us. Be restored today. And you know, let's go further. As the people of Jesus, let's go and find those who are hurt, those who are full of shame. Let's bring the miracle of the love of God to them so that they dive out of their boat and whatever and swim back to shore. And then let's meet them, not with condemnation, but with a meal. And in that meal, let's speak words of life, words of affirmation, words of restoration. And let's begin to adventure together to be Christ followers who know how to pick failures up because God has picked us up in our failures too. Amen.
Jesus, lead us draw near. Alleluia, alleluia, help us draw near.
So I've really enjoyed our discussing this morning about where is God when we fail. And I really want us to take home this today. God is love. And God is a God of restoration. I don't want you to just watch this and think these are nice thoughts. You know, there's a chance for you, my friends, my watchers, to find that restoring grace for yourself. I related my own story, didn't I, when I was talking about how God restored me. And today Jesus Christ holds his hands out to you because he wants to take you and restore you to what you should have been all along, a child of God. Pray today. You pray. You speak to Jesus just like I spoke to Jesus in 2014. And you say to him today, please restore me. And I can guarantee that the work of God's Holy Spirit will come to your heart and you will have a sense of Jesus Christ coming not just for a meal outside but inside to share his very life with you. I'm really excited about this. May God truly do a work of grace in us and through us in this world. This is the thing I miss when we're not face to face, because I can't hug anyone now or I can't pray with anyone personally. But God be with you, folks. And let's just say together, and I say it really from the heart to you today. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you now and evermore. Amen. God bless you, folks.